Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, unlocking the power of thinkorswim, the award-winning trading platforms loaded with features that let you dive deeper into the market. Visualize your trades in a new light on thinkorswim desktop with robust charting and analysis tools, all while you uncover new opportunities with up-to-the-minute market news and insights. thinkorswim is available on desktop, web, and mobile to meet you where you are. It's built by the trading obsessed to help you trade brilliantly. Learn more at schwab.com/trading.
This is your before and after story. Southeastern College can help you prepare for a secure and fulfilling career in the growing healthcare field. We offer a wide range of careers to choose from. So whether you want to be a medical assistant, medical billing and coding specialist, nurse, surgical technologist, or another healthcare career, we've got you covered. Become a vital part of a healthcare team and make a real difference. Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome in to Operation Domination, your favorite football podcast, because it's here. Training camp is here. Everyone's on the field. I can feel it. Kickoff is so close. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater. If you want to listen to Operation Domination, my voice goes really, really high and then really, really low right afterwards, just like I did right there. Just go to your favorite podcast app and then make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Football Advice YouTube channel by going to @FFAdviceNet, because we got a lot of content coming out every single day to get you guys prepped for the 2025 season from all angles: redraft, best ball, dynasty, you name it, we got it. I'm joined here with the crew, Chase Thornton and Adam LaRue, and we do have a special guest that we need to get introduced. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the number one medical expert in all of fantasy sports, the one, the only, Dr. Brian Scott!
I've waited all off season to hear that. That was great.
Dude, it's weird when we don't have you for so long, because in season, if you guys don't know, if you're first tuning into Operation Domination, we literally have Brian on every single week. Like, we're going to still do that episode. So it's weird when we go this long without having you.
Yeah, the feeling's mutual. It's an awkward kind of, you're not sure if we broke up, if we're still together. Do I send flowers? Do I wait to hear from you first? It's that kind of feeling. Yeah,
We're on break.
we're still Take House, or I mean, Chase would know. Is there a nickname for Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift? We're still T Swizzle. Is that what it is?
Yeah. My favorite couple. I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into this thing. So we are talking, because we have the doctor on the show, we're talking about the injury news that you guys need to know going into training camp. It's been one day, and we already have gotten some news, unfortunately. One I'm going to breeze by real fast. Will Levis is out for the season. So if you thought there was any doubt that maybe Cam Ward was starting week 1, that doubt has been removed. And then... Yeah, exactly. And then the other one is, 49ers lose yet another wide receiver to a hamstring issue. Jacob Cohen went down today on air. So how severe that is, we have no idea. We'll have to find out. We're going to talk about some wide receivers for the 49ers and other places today too. But first, I want to start off with the training camp battle that everybody's been talking about. So this is big. Anthony Richardson, the shoulder issue that he's been constantly trying to recover from. Brian, what do you make of this issue?
Isn't it crazy? He's battling it out with Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and you have your Giants hat on.
And I'm so glad we got rid of him. But here he is now. People are falling into that trap just like we did. So Richardson, yeah, it wasn't that long ago, 2023, his rookie year, that he went down with a grade 3 AC joint separation that required season-ending surgery by renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. Neil Elatrash in LA. And he started having some soreness as we headed into the off-season training programs here, and they called it an aggravation. But if you watched us throughout last season on Dan's show here, you knew that I have always been very cautiously optimistic about his recovery because these injuries, when they occur and then have surgery to fix, are very precarious as far as the repairs go. There's a high failure rate for these types of procedures. The repairs and reconstructions that we do for these don't always kind of hold. So it's not unusual to see somebody have an aggravation or soreness, or possibly worst case scenario, it fails altogether, and then they end up either, having to have a repeat procedure or something more done. So it wasn't a surprise, I guess, to me that this happened, but certainly something that you should always keep an eye on going forward throughout the rest of his career, because this is his throwing shoulder, and it happened on a direct contact type of hit. Now, there was reportedly no direct contact that caused this irritation. It was purely from whatever workouts and throwing he was doing, so they're confident that he's going to make a full recovery. He had a second opinion and saw Dr. Neil Eltrosh again, who also recommended just some rest and rehab, no surgery required this time around. So we'll have to see whether or not this rears its ugly head throughout the year. I think it might at some point. So Daniel Jones getting thrown out of New York and into the Indianapolis Colts fire, and seems to be riding high here.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams July summer sale and get 30% off paints and stains July 18th through the 28th. With prices starting at $34.29, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Yeah, it's hot for Daniel Jones, I guess. I'm just a little bit worried with Anthony Richardson. Like, it feels like all the comparisons he got to Cam Newton, but we're getting like the old man Cam Newton at the start of the career. I don't know. I don't want to go into it too much because, we can't talk Colts quarterbacks without talking to Adam. And I'm going to throw this in, Adam, just in case you didn't see. So they did split Richardson and Daniel Jones as his first team reps today. And the report was neither one of them looked great. But you go ahead and take this part away.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's about what you'd expect here. Look, we went over this last week, if not the week before last, and we've gone over it a couple times this offseason. I think it really boils down to how you look at it. If you ask me, I think as a standalone, Richardson would be a better fantasy asset. But the reality of the situation, neither of them is probably that good. Certainly, Daniel Jones, for the vast majority of the weapons, it would be a lot better, particularly the receivers. It remains to be seen how much having a running Anthony Richardson being more of a running threat than Daniel Jones, both of them being a running threat, but Richardson being more of one, how that would impact Jonathan Taylor. Probably not very much. So otherwise, Pittman benefits from Daniel Jones, and certainly Josh Downs would benefit from Daniel Jones. But on the whole, probably not the biggest fantasy piece we're going to talk about today, if we're being honest with ourselves, as much as I would love for it to be. I would love for my team to be the center of attention, but I just don't think it is.
Probably. I was going to make sure you mentioned Josh Downs, because don't forget, Wan'Dale Robinson had a stupid amount of targets there. With
Josh Downs is the one that I think stands to have the most to gain with a Daniel Jones. I think that, to me, is pretty clear. I think when it comes to the tight ends and when it comes to like Pierce or some of the other receivers, like it's murky whether Richardson might even be better. But for Josh Downs, I think it's very clear, like it would be a massive gain for Josh Downs.
Well, when all they do with Alec Pierce is send him as far as he can and chuck it.
And all that Anthony Richardson can complete is as far as he can.
Right. So all the Alec Pierce dynasty owners are like, come on.
The one receiver he has any chemistry with.
Yeah, and then with the shoulder stuff, who knows if he keeps throwing the ball down the field anymore. Najee Harris blew up his eye and fired. I'm exaggerating here, but it was a firework accident.
So this is what I love about the offseason. I used to do a segment on my show called the Throckmorton Sign Injury of the Week, and it focused around injuries that occurred outside of the world of sports, and they usually had a funny story around it or some quirky story to it. For example, one guy slipped and fractured his ankle getting out of the shower, stuff like that. Well, add Najee Harris to that list. 4th of July event in Antioch, California. Apparently there was a firework mishap. Something shot off in the wrong direction. injured him in the eye. He went to the hospital, was discharged, nothing serious. Sounds like he might have had like maybe a foreign body or a corneal abrasion or something. Those are easy. They recover fine. No lingering issues with this. He's probably getting some little antiseptic or antibiotic drops in his eye and patching it. And as of July 22nd, which was yesterday, he was placed on the non-football injury list to start training camp, but it doesn't expect him to be on there for long. And come the beginning of the season, he should be ready to go.
So it's not going to affect his vision on the field, being able to make the cutbacks. That's what you're saying.
It should not, and if they use that as an excuse, they're lying.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. I mean, we talked about literally last week, Amon-Ra Hampton and Najee Harris. So he's not going to, they have the Hall of Fame game. So they play, I believe it's next Thursday on July 31st with the Detroit Lions there. But if he's going to be missed some time, even if it's not late in training camp, what kind of a boost does this go for Amon-Ra Hampton? Or do you think because it's, a running back and maybe still gets 4 weeks, that it doesn't matter?
Well, like I talked about it a little bit last week, and I said that I think people are overestimating just how much, Amon-Ra Hampton is going to take away from Najee. I think the two of them are going to be a little bit closer split. And knowing that this isn't going to be a serious thing for Najee, knowing that he's going to be able to play right away and not going to miss a ton of time, that doesn't really change my opinion of that. I'm not any more worried or less worried than I was before necessarily. I still think he's still going as running back 34 right now, ADP wise, 107th overall. I still think he could end up being a bargain for that because as we kind of all agreed last week, I think he and Hampton both can have running back 2 value this season. So I still think Harris is kind of could be a value pick where he's going right now. He's not going to be the phenom he was his rookie season. He's going to be a running back 2 at best, even if I think he maintains the 1A role in a 1A, 1B situation. But no, knowing that this isn't a big deal, I'm still good with Najee, as good as I was before with him.
Okay, well that's good news, or at least good news for Najee, but we'll see if it's the headache that we all think it might be as a split result. This was a weird situation because we didn't find this out until late spring, early summer. Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of dealing with the knee issue. So Brian, what you got on that?
Sounds like he actually had a cleanup procedure, which means to me it was probably like just an arthroscopic procedure where they could go in, do some diagnostic exams, and also therapeutically just clean up the knee of any debris that may have been floating around in there or whatever. Apparently it's not serious. He's not participating in OTAs. He's probably going to be out the beginning of training camp, but should be working his way back pretty quickly if he doesn't start. And it shouldn't pose any major issues for the beginning of the season. I see no reason why he can't continue to be the Lions' lead receiver as he has the last 4 years, if it was just a simple scope, which it sounds like it was.
Okay, well, that is good news because we always get nervous when Amon-Ra St. Brown in the knee because that's something that's kind of popped up here and there. He's always managed to play through it, always managed to be productive, so we're not too concerned about there. He's not a receiver that depends on his speed in order to get his production, right? He has his set role. He is a wide receiver, go inside out and yet be a red zone. To me, he's a Cooper Kupp version essentially for Jared Goff and has been since he's been there. We'll see with the new scheme, what continues. Obviously he's going to keep some things in place that Ben Johnson already had. What's his stamp on it? We'll have to see, but it's no question Amon-Ra St. Brown is number 1 guy right now. He's going as the 12th overall player, wide receiver 6 off the board. I don't see any reason based on what Brian's telling me to change that. I mean, he's going right ahead of Nico and Brian Thomas. And I feel that's about right. While going outside some of the top tier wide receivers. So his value seems about right. Not concerned about the issue. Chris Godwin. So he started off in the pup. They don't seem to they want to put a timetable on it right now. But what are you making out of Chris Godwin?
Yeah, so he's on the PUP list, as you stated, recovering from a dislocated ankle injury in Week 7 of last season. They're saying that he's going to be ready for Week 1. It sounds like they're being extra precautious in their approach to his recovery here. But let's not forget, he had a season-ending ACL back in 2021 in Week 15. And the last couple of seasons, he struggled with injuries, which have kept him out at least 2 to 3 games a year. So, week one's still the goal. I think that's doable. Time frame wise, he should be good by then, if not already. So it just sounds like they're bringing him along slow. But at the skilled position players, with injuries stacking up over the years, age creeping up on you, these things take a toll. You definitely lose some explosiveness. You lose some of that agility. And where do you usually see that first? But in the stats. So something to think about.
Did you guys hear this report yesterday from Jenna Lane of ESPN that he underwent a second, quote, minor procedure on that ankle in the offseason as well? I've heard some reports that he's had swollen, his ankle looked really, really swollen at practice and that kind of thing. And it came out, like I said, yesterday, he underwent a second minor procedure. Apparently it wasn't a surprise to them and it was just to, quote unquote, clean things out. But does that change any of your opinion on things, Brian, about what
it just might push the timeline back, which is why they are saying that they're bringing him along slow. And they may, like you said, they may have anticipated they were going to have to do a second surgical procedure or do something. And that's why they've been saying all along that they're taking his recovery more cautiously than they would otherwise, because he probably struggled from the very beginning, is my guess. It is surprising to hear that they did a second procedure, though, because usually with the ankle fracture dislocations, usually that stuff is all addressed at once, not staged. So he must have been struggling with something significant in order to have a secondary procedure. So, yeah, it certainly would raise a red flag. Might mean that he's not going to be ready week one. We'll have to see. But if they had anticipated this and are taking his rehab cautiously, then week one is not out of the question. It just may prolong things.
Oh, you're killing me. He's on my Scott Fishbowl team.
Well, I know, Brian, you alluded to it. Do you expect that Chris Godwin can be a version of what he was last year, or are you really not counting on that?
Listen, even with just the ACL, man, every year that goes by, every tick of father time's clock at the skill position players, and this is just speaking, from a statistical data standpoint, like stats decline, performance declines year after year. So again, you start stacking up injuries like ACLs, fractured dislocations of the ankle, in a position player who's asked to be explosive, dynamic on the field. I don't care how great these guys are, how physically fit they are, their performance will decline. It's just a matter of how quickly.
So, Chase, with that thought, I mean, they drafted Amika Buka in the first round, right? Jalen McMillan is still there, who performed well down the stretch in lieu of all the injuries and stuff like that. So what are you thinking, that those guys have more value now? Or if the idea is that Chris Godwin is going to be back week one, are you not boosting them up your redraft board?
I'm not necessarily boosting them up on my redraft board. I still like any of those options for best ball, from Godwin all the way down. And I think Mike Evans has tremendous value right now, because he will still, whether Godwin's on the field or not, Mike Evans is still going to fill the role that Mike Evans fills, which is kind of, Baker's F it, chuck it guy, and catching touchdowns all over the place. Godwin was setting up for a hell of a year. Like he was having a monster season, 16.1 half PPR points per game last season. That would have ranked him second for the season, behind only Jamar Chase. And granted, Jamar Chase scored 20 points a game, half PPR, but Chris Godwin was having a monster season. He's only going as wide receiver 33 right now. I would expect that yesterday's news probably pushes that down even further. I still like buying that dip on Chris Godwin. I am not necessarily boosting Ibuka or McMillan, because I think they're going to get a boost already. And I think you're probably going to have to overpay for what I think they're going to give you this season. I'll take the discount on Godwin and take what I think he can give me when he gets back on the field. I'm still in on him for the year, but you may have to be patient with him and have a plan B or C, or however far down your roster he is.
Just don't overdraft him. That's
no,
really
I won't. Do not overdraft any of them, though. I wouldn't overdraft any of them.
Take Chris Godwin's ADP and minus around, and then that's where you can start to feel safe to draft them. That's how I approach it with older players who are already walking in with injuries. So, all right. So with that, I guess we got to talk about my 49er wide receivers. So Brandon Aiyuk dealing with the ACL MCL. Let's start with him. This wasn't just a clean ACL. So here we go, Bri. Lay it down for me.
Yeah, so he's starting out on the physically unable to perform list as he recovers from this torn ACL MCL, which he had surgery to reconstruct, and that happened in week 7 last season. While the team's encouraged by his progress, they're not giving any concrete timeline for his return to the field, unfortunately, which makes me believe that we're probably looking past maybe even that minimum 4-game stretch, maybe closer to a 6-game stretch before we actually see him back on the field. Time-wise, that would be closer to about that year mark, which is when most players kind of peak as far as getting back to their pre-injury level status. So that would make more sense to me. Again, a player who's often injured. He was a featured player in the year he came out of college in my pre-draft injury special. So I've been keeping an eye on him his entire career since he was drafted. He dealt with injuries all through college. He dealt with injuries all through the pros. This one, unfortunately, took him out for a significant time, and it's going to be probably the most challenging injury he'll have to recover from. So I look at closer to probably a 6-game absence as we get into the regular season.
Well, so follow up real quickly with the Ricky Pearsall hamstring, because then we can kind of dive into the 49er conversation there.
Yeah, so he's currently on the PUP list as he recovers from a ACL, MCL as well from last season too. Am I screwing this up? I think I got.
No, he's got a hamstring.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I screwed this up on my notes. Boy, that was really botched that one, didn't I?
It's all good. It happens.
Take a second to find Ricky Pearsall there. So Brandon Aiyuk, week 6 maybe is what Brian is saying, and I think that's what we've kind of been hearing. I think we all expected he wasn't going to play in September. Only the most optimistic of reports were putting him in September. The most likely outcome was always going to be mid-October. I think the question was going to be, was it going to be beginning of October, or we're going to talk more about like week 8, week 9? Did you find Ricky yet?
Yeah, I didn't really have much on him. That's why I skipped right over it. But so the good news is this injury is happening now, right? Like timing is everything when it comes to hamstrings, and there is adequate time for him to make a full recovery and not risk re-injury, which with hamstring injuries, there's a super high re-injury rate within the first few weeks from returning back to play. So they're going to bring him along very slowly. They're not going to rush him through the preseason. He probably is going to participate very little. He'll probably end up doing most of his action on the sideline with the medical staff. But again, the goal is to get him ready week 1. I don't think that's unreasonable. Just don't expect to see a lot from him in the preseason here. And the goal and that's a good way to approach it if you're the 49ers, given, Debo, Brandon's injury and everything, and Debo being gone. You're going to have to baby this injury and take it along real slow, because you don't want this rearing its ugly head later in the year, which, as we know from historically speaking and from seasons past, the hamstring re-injury is a big problem.
Yeah, it is. And this isn't the first time that Ricky Pearsall has been dealing with a hamstring issue. He dealt with that in Florida. He dealt with that, in the offseason last year before the shooting incident and everything like that. So this is not something necessarily new for him, which is why I think they're starting him off on the PUP. And they've consistently said he's going to come off of it soon. This happened back in OTAs. They're probably doing exactly what Brian's saying, which is let's make sure this guy is 100% healthy before.
And he's not the only receiver on this list that has dealt with hamstring issues previously, as we'll get to later. So.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk a little bit about the 49ers situation, because here's the deal, folks. If you're drafting right now, and I would still say wait till late August, especially if we're talking redraft leagues, but if you are drafting right now, Juwan Jennings is the highest wide receiver, and it really shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. And while he wants a new contract, he did report to practice, and he practiced the first day. But he's 90th overall. He's going about that mid-8th round. And then 8 spots later, overall, that is, Ricky Pearsall sit at 98th, beginning of the 9th round. And then Brandon Aiyuk is at 108, and this is all according to Draft Sharks, and late in the 9th round. I'll say this, even if Brandon Aiyuk's not coming back for 6 games, most leagues that I play in, and I would think most leagues at this point for home leagues, there's an IR spot. I'm willing to take Brandon Aiyuk in the back end 9th, 10th round if I can stash him on my IR spot and see if he can kind of bounce back second half of the season. So let's just put that out of the way, because I mean, Chase and Adam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you're drafting Brandon Aiyuk before Juwan Jennings or before Ricky Pearsall right now anyway.
No, but I had said that about Brandon Aiyuk earlier this offseason. I on this show, I said I was big on Brandon Aiyuk when he can get back on the field. I mean, partially because of the situation with Debo out of town and everything else. But yeah, like you said, if you've got the IR spot to stash him in, you don't want to be clogging up the bottom of your roster, even the bottom of your roster with somebody like that right now. But I still like Aiyuk and what he can offer this team. And I think they're going to need what he can offer this team with the dearth of wide receivers that they have right now on the field.
Yeah. So what this really boils down to me is that you're looking at it from one of two perspectives. Do you want, because you want to take one of these 49ers wide receivers, maybe both of them go off, maybe all of them go off, who knows, but one of them is definitely going to. So you have Juwan Jennings, who had a great year last year. We know he's third in Juwan. We know he's a safety blanket for Brock Purdy. But then you also have the tantalizing talent of Ricky Pearsall, which, due to the roller coaster that we've all verbiage a million times here, we didn't get to see exactly what he could have been in his rookie season. We only got to saw the pop at the end of the season. Whether that's a fluke or not, too small of a sample size to really know. But I would say this: Ricky Pearsall, as a athlete, as a talent, is more talented, in my opinion, at least as an athlete, than Juwan Jennings. There's more upside there. And from what I keep hearing, that he might be the one who's more inclined to get the Debo Samuel routes, meaning getting set up for over the middle, set up for yards after catch. We know what Juwan does, though, and he already has that repertoire. So, Adam, when you're looking at this and you want to take a shot at one of these wide receivers, and they're going about the same territory, we're talking about beginning 9th round, end of 9th round, or middle of 8th round, beginning of 9th round, somewhere in that range. Which one do you rather grab here? Adam, you're muted.
Oh, no.
You have to be muted on your end because you're not muted on our end.
Come back, Adam.
See if you can figure that out. I'll give you guys.
Oh, no, he left. No.
He's got to figure out some technical issues. It's okay. So for me, when I'm looking at this, I was gung-ho. It was Ricky because I want to bet on the talent. I want to bet on the guy who's more suited to get yards after catch in Kyle Shanahan's system, because that's the guy who typically just goes off, right? And then I was like, well, Juwan had the good year. Every report is when he's been out in practice is that he's looked awesome, that he looks like an even better version of himself, and he looks like the best wide receiver hands down the 49ers have right now. And then I'm starting to think to myself, is it really that crazy to take both? I mean, we're talking the 8th and 9th round. Is it really that crazy? Just be like, you know what? No, it is a little bit crazy. I'm not
Homer.
Yeah, that's fine. We can draft all 49ers team in best ball. I got it. It's all set up. So, and because now they're so close, because I thought Juwan Jennings was going to be like, and maybe this will still be the case, we get closer to drafts, I thought he was going to be at least a couple of rounds higher than Ricky Pearsall. So I was ready to bet on the undervalue of Pearsall. Now they're neck and neck. So I don't see
weird how bunched up they all are. It is weird.
Yeah. And with the schedule they have and everything else, I don't see how you're not drafting Juwan Jennings first at that value if they're going to be around there, just because you have a certain safety blanket. Now, the one argument I would make is that I think it's more likely that when Brandon Aiyuk comes back, he's replacing Juwan Jennings. He's not replacing Ricky Pearsall's side of things. So, Adam, if we have you back, why don't you comment to that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay,
Woo!
so I joined midway through that, but just the value between Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, which one would you rather have?
It's tough. So Juwan Jennings impressed me quite a bit last year. To your point, before I had to get in and out real quick, Juwan Jennings had an awesome year last year. I think really impressive. Like, he didn't quite hit the 1,000 yards, but he was close. The touchdowns weren't necessarily there. But the yards per route run were really impressive. They had like very good NFL receiver yards per route run, which kind of gives me like a pause when I go into it. My initial response would have been like, he stinks. He's always a guy. He's been a guy. He will continue to be a guy. This was a fluke. And that was kind of the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause on that. But Ricky Pearsall was definitely someone coming out of his draft class that I really liked. I think he is a good athlete, kind of to your point. I think he is the best athlete of this group, kind of sans Aiyuk, until Ayuk's return. I think that's going to help him quite a bit. But I wonder if someone like Kittle doesn't become like their way to stretch the field. If they need to continue going down like underneath just the consistent guy. Like, if I'm taking a safe bet, I think it's on Juwan Jennings. I think Juwan Jennings is going to be easily will plant my flag. He will be a starting caliber fantasy asset for sure. I have very little doubt that that is the case. If you want to swing for the upside, I think that is Ricky Pearsall, but I think he's more likely to burn you. Me personally, like, it just kind of depends on how that roster shakes out, because I think them being around the same value is fair. Because I think that Juwan Jennings, we've seen the peak of his upside, and the peak of his upside got 6 touchdowns.
Yeah. No, and just to kind of break down the numbers for you guys. I mean, his yards per out run, according to Fantasy Points data, was 2.47. Very strong there. His air yard share was 29% for the team. And just to kind of compare him to George Kittle was almost 21%. And then it was pretty much everybody else after. Well, I should say Brandon Aiyuk, when he played, was getting 26% of the air yard share there. But again, we don't know what he is when he comes back and all of that stuff. So here, Adam, to kind of wrap up what you were saying, I think it comes down to, if you want an upside shot, Ricky Pearsall's that guy. If you want somebody who's just like, look, I know I'll be able to start you bare minimum as my wide receiver 3 on my roster, probably even when Brandon Aiyuk comes back, that would be Juwan Jennings. I think it comes down to your roster construction there at that point. But that's, some people are gonna melt their minds over that. So let's get back to the injury part of this. So Stefon Diggs ACL, and it's been good news. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, as of Tuesday, he was cleared for full participation in training camp, which began today. So that's a significant step in his recovery from his Week 8 2024 season injury. So that's a week after Brandon. So just to go to show you, the different timetables you can have with this injury. Still, I would pump the brakes a little bit as we head into the preseason here. I don't think he's really going to be ready in full go until we get really close to week 1. So we'll probably see him doing some limited stuff and have his activity kind of monitored closely as he kind of ramps it back up early on here in spring preseason, I should say. And but I do anticipate he'll be ready week 1. The question is he going to be up to full speed yet? Probably not, but that should work itself out as we get into the beginning of the season here. So sounds like his injury was much more straightforward than Brandon Aiyuk's, which is good news for Stefon Diggs.
Yeah, it plays a big difference when it's just your ACL and not everything else that goes with it. That's for sure. So I want to go back to Adam on this one because he got interrupted too, because the next player I want to talk to Chase. But so with that, Stefon Diggs, I mean, he was already practicing a little bit here, getting mixed in. But I want to get your opinion from this from the standpoint of, we've been big Kyle Williams dynasty people that could potentially look at Kyle Williams like, yeah, you might have drafted him in the 3rd round in your rookie drafts, and there's a chance maybe that he'd be an outside shot to be number 1 receiver for this team year 1, depending upon what was going on with Diggs. So with Diggs looking good, what do you think about Kyle Williams and Diggs and all that for this season?
Diggs might be a threat for a year, but we're talking about a guy, I mean, to reference what Brian Scott said like maybe 15 minutes ago, like, you talk about a guy who has this injury, has had other injuries, is already up there in age, and was like, this isn't a guy who it's like, oh, he's coming sky high and this is going to set off a decline. Like, we're already 2 years into him declining actively. Like, the trend is downwards before the injury. So this is someone that, like, best case, I think, okay, cool. A year out from your injury, you peak back to what you were last year, which was 80% of what you used to be. And then you continue to decline, which to me is like, okay, maybe you hold off Kyle Williams for a year as a veteran for Drake May. That's great. That could get him 1 year of value. But long term, would not be concerned about this in the slightest. And even towards the end of the season, I would pretty strongly feel like Kyle Williams should still be coming into his own. And even just some of the other younger receivers here, I was surprised that Diggs got the money and kind of the compensation that he did in general this offseason from the Patriots. I think it was just them really wanting to have a veteran presence for Drake May. And that part, I think, is largely what he's getting paid for, not necessarily what he's going to bring athletically. And besides all that, it's going to be tough because they have a lot of slot receivers, right? Like, that's it. Like, Pop Douglas, for some people, Kyle Williams should be lining up there. The UDFA that has a lot of hype, whose name I'm blanking on, but it's just going to be tough. I don't know, for some of the intermediate routes. And what I was going with that is the Stefon Diggs has largely gone down the field throughout most of his career. But as he gets older, that's typically the transition that players want to make is to the slot, and it's going to be really hard for the Patriots to do that.
No, it is. I mean, look, Josh McDaniels had to look at Stefon Diggs and say, hey, we're going to make you Wes Welker or Julian Edelman, and that's how I'm going to feature you. So you will be, and that just screws over everybody else. But that's the only way I could see him being a guy I really want to draft right now. Because, I mean, look, it's hard for me. I don't want to root against a guy who has the same birthday I do, November 29th. We both have the same exact birthday. But he's going to turn 32. In the middle of the season with a knee injury, and a guy to Adam's point, we've already seen start to decline. You have to be a little bit crazy to sit there and think. And right now, just so you guys know, Stefon Diggs is going in the back end of 8th round around the 92nd pick. There's no upside there. You're taking Diggs just to have a floor based on volume, not much more. This is not going to be a great offense, even if it's better than what we saw last season. It's still not going to be a great offense. I'm not saying that means Kyle Williams is set to pop off, but I think there's a better chance that Kyle Williams has more upside second half of the year, depending on how this pans out, than maybe Stefon Diggs does. And right now, redraft leagues, Kyle Williams is pretty much not going drafted, essentially, at this point. So something to kind of keep an eye on there. I still don't know if I even feel comfortable grabbing Stefon Diggs in the 8th round with all that, unless I really just need someone to plug and play the first few weeks of the season, because that's the only time I'm going to feel confident that he's going to actually just get the volume consistently enough to have a base floor. All right, so let's talk about the Packer wide receivers, because that's what we do in fantasy football. We're always trying to figure out the Packer wide receivers. Now, we got to kick it off, though, with an injury update. So Christian Watson trying to come back from his ACL. What do you got there?
Yeah, so this is awesome that you kind of had this order. So, right, we see Brandon Aiyuk, right, ACL, MCL. We see the prolonged recovery for him, despite the fact that he was a week before Stefon Diggs. We see how Stefon Diggs is looking great. He's ramping up his activity. He's cleared. He's going to be ready week 1, possibly, more than likely. And then you got Christian Watson, a guy who has dealt with hamstring injuries throughout his career, so much so that when we featured him on your show, Dan, I think it was a year or two ago, he was working with hamstring training expert laboratory at the University of Wisconsin trying to prevent hamstring injuries. And what do we know about hamstring injuries? Well, there's a high correlation with hamstring issues and ACL injuries. And then lo and behold, in week 18, he tears his ACL. So that's a problem because timing is of the essence when it comes to this injury. They're saying he's ahead of schedule. He's on PUP. The question going into the season with him is whether or not he's going to be activated. Is he going to go on reserve PUP? If he goes on reserve PUP, there is a time frame with which the Packers will have to decide whether he's coming back or is his season done. And to be honest, that's a realistic possibility here. He could end up having this season wiped out if he's not in fact ready. And that, again, because of timing and because of his history, that's a real possibility at this juncture of the game. So I would keep that in the back of your mind when you're looking at possibly drafting him.
Yeah, so Chase, right now, Jaden Reed is the highest ADP Packer wide receiver at 96. So we're talking mid-8th round. That's the highest Packer wide receiver. So as much as we talk about these wide receivers, no one's valuing any of them all that much. Jaden Reed, by the way, was the wide receiver 3 for the first 6 weeks of the season, and then you couldn't play him again after that. Like that's how crazy it was. So talk about Christian Watson, the ACL, what Brian just talked about, and what you're making of this Packer wide receivers. Are we looking for value here, or is it just going to be too much of a spreader?
This beer isn't strong enough for what I need to be talking about this right now. So I think there's the Matthew Golden draft pick on top of the Christian Watson injury, on top of, like you said, Jaden Reed's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde season last year, on top of Romeo Doubs still being there, on top of everyone still loving what Dontavian Wicks can do, but does not always do. It's only exacerbated, I think, the same conversation that we were having last offseason about the Packers and their pass game, in that, everybody thought they were going to have a good pass game, but we just didn't know which part we wanted except for Jordan Love. Well, then Jordan Love got hurt, and then he wasn't all that, great to have fantasy-wise either. This is a team that wants to run the ball more. I'm not really excited about diving into their pass game, and I don't care if you're talking about Golden. I don't care about who you're talking about. That being said, I did draft Christian Watson late in the fishbowl. This is a guy that
you go, Chase.
Hey, He's still a guy that got 21.4 yards per reception last season. That's unique in this league. There are very few guys in this league that do that. We talked about one of them kind of earlier with Alec Pearson. You've got to have a guy that can throw the ball 800 yards to be able to do that. That is unique in this league. There's literally only a handful of guys that can do that, but he is never healthy. And as much as I like to urinate all over former Packer wide receiver disappointment, deep threat, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Christian Watson is sure heading that same direction as being a guy who, even though he has a unique skill set, he's still 8.5 feet tall. He still can run like the wind. I mean, I think he'll still run like the wind after this, but all he does is run deep routes and maybe catch it, maybe not, and probably drop it right when you just want him, really need one. So I think people are rightly being scared off by the crowded wide receiver room on all of these guys. I am too. I'm not necessarily jumping on any of these guys, Golden Reed or otherwise. He's going right now he's going in the hundreds right now, like 107. He's basically free in drafts if you want him. I'm not even great on that. We just talked about it. It was a week 18 injury for a year-long, maybe a year-long recovery process. I took a shot on him in the fishbowl, but he'll probably be the first guy off the roster when I need somebody to replace him. So just steer clear of Christian Watson. As much as it pains me to say this, we need to stop bringing up guys on my fishbowl team too, buddy. So,
you should have consulted with me before the draft.
I know, right? Yeah, you couldn't have talked. We literally just did the last pick of our draft today. This morning, the last pick of our small draft. You couldn't have talked to me a couple days ago. Yeah,
I'm sorry, Chase.
When it comes down to it, someone on this Packer wide receivers is going too low. We know this. Somebody's going too low. Plain and simple. The problem is you have no idea who to take the shot on. My guess would be Jaden Reed, but as we saw last year, he only does a very specific role for that team. And if they don't feel like they need him, especially if the defense is playing well, which is typically what happens. If the defense is playing well, they don't have him on the field nearly as much. He gets hurt more than anybody. So best ball is the way I want to attack these Packer wide receivers. Maybe take a shot later on if they're my wide receiver 4 or 5 on my team.
Take Tucker Kraft, wait on a tight end. Take Tucker Kraft. You don't have to worry about any of the wide receivers. Tucker will be just as solid as anybody else going in that range.
Another generational tight end according to Chase. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's talk about Tyreek Hill and the wrist issue. And he's been very vocal in press conferences. So, Brian, I don't know if you have anything to make of that.
He's been all over the place the last couple of years. The wrist is, I think, more of just like a way to kind of bring him back to normal. But apparently this second procedure that he had to remove the screws from his wrist was part of the plan all along, which is not unusual depending on the type of surgery he had. We do this with a lot of different types of surgeries where we know we're going to have to come back in to do some type of hardware removal or something else. So this was not unplanned or unscheduled, and it's been planned as part of his offseason recovery. So it sounds like he's recovering well. He should be ready for the start of training camp if he's not already. It's not a lower extremity injury. I don't think this is as big a deal as some people are making it out to be. It did probably affect him last season to some degree, but so did the fact that he got pulled over, dragged out of his Ferrari speeding down the highway. So did the fact that he's got like 10 kids from 9 different women. I mean, it's just another thing in this guy's realm that is a distraction, and that's really all it is. But he should still perform on the field. It hasn't affected his speed, and that's really what he carries that a lot of guys don't have.
Yeah, so I'm worried he's becoming Antonio Brown. And Adam, you can kind of help me out with this because a wrist injury shouldn't make you slower. And he played all 17 games last year. Here's the deal. 2022, 2023, 170, 171 targets, 122. And these are like the same games played last season. 119 receptions each of 23 and 22, 81 last year. Almost 1,800 yards. We're talking those 2 years. Not even 1,000 last season. I mean, we're talking like half the production across the board for Tyreek Hill. Now, some of that, of course, the Dolphins offense, we've talked about it, was just not the same either. But you're looking at Tyreek Hill. What is your value on a guy that right now is going as a 27th player overall early in the 3rd round?
I think it's about spot on. We talked about this a few weeks ago where we talked about like this time of summer, I think the best the rankings have ever been, the most accurate they've been, the ADP rather, not rankings. And I think Tyreek Hill is very emblematic of that. He's someone who, look, agreed, it looks rough last year. When you really dig into it, yards per route run, he was by far the best Dolphin outside of Dwayne Eskridge, who had 3 targets. So we can put that there, save that for another time. But it was just a really, really bad passing offense. So look, there's a very, very possible that happens again. I think that's the scare. I think more than anything, right? I'm more afraid of Tua gets hurt one more time, we're on to the backup carousel once again, or the offensive line falters, or a combination of those things. That to me is the scare of drafting Tyreek Hill more than the off the field stuff, because he's someone who, to be honest with you, for a long time, I kept myself from drafting Tyreek Hill because of the off the field stuff, but he stays like 1 foot near the line, but never quite crosses it to where he faces real repercussions. There have been a couple times where I think, my opinion, maybe should have. Sure. But he never has. And I don't think we've hit a point where he's going to. So reality of the situation, I think we'll get him into training camp here shortly. Everyone will go, he's fast. And, that part will no longer be an issue. We'll stop talking about the issues of Tyreek Hill. He'll have to stop being busy. We'll have things for him to do, and, it'll be fine. So I don't think the issues with Tyreek Hill's production or his value lie in between the ears of Tyreek Hill, or even in the body of Tyreek Hill. It's entirely in Tua's noggin.
Nope, to his noggin in the offensive line to be able to protect
him.
That's
exactly.
That 100% feels like what this is going to boil down to.
Those are 2 big question marks, too.
Yeah,
they're big question marks, but
big question marks.
Unfortunately, they don't involve the player.
Right. It's Adam's
on top of all the question marks that they're all are on top. We don't know if he's going to be the captain, get a girl pregnant, and Brown off.
And he can do all those 3 things and not face any repercussions. We've seen it. We've seen him do all those things.
Brian's it isn't like his speed's been affected. His career long reception came last season, 80 yards. His career long reception was last season when we all kind of were ready to give him up after,
And he went nuclear week 1. Like, let's not forget, like, it wasn't like, oh, last season he stuck the whole time. It was like when the offense was good for like 2 weeks, he was good. And then everything fell apart and he went right along with them.
I drafted him last year. Trust me, I know.
One thing I can always bet on is that the Dolphins are going to hit the over week 1. That's the one thing I can always bet on no matter what. So after that, who knows? Brian, I'm going to give you a heads up. I'm going to skip down to the last player because I want to make sure we get him in. So Joe Mixon, ankle issue right now he's dealing with. What do you got here?
So apparently it was a non-football related injury that found him on the NFI list, they call it. Not exactly sure what it was, but he was seen wearing a boot during the offseason and then has been ramping up his workouts ever since. Has participated in some OTAs, did not participate in OTAs or minicamp due to this issue, but sounds like they're going to ease him back into practice slowly, and they're giving a positive outlook. They added some backup running backs to the roster with Nick Chubb. They drafted Woody Marks. So the problem is you've got Dameon Pierce and J.J. Taylor are both on the PUP list as well, dealing with their own injuries. So you have to wonder if maybe they knew about Mixon's injury even long before we did, which it sounds like is probably the case, but we're not exactly sure just how significant it is. But it sounds like whatever he's dealing with, the recovery is going well. So my guess is he'll be ready come week 1. Hopefully it's nothing serious, and he'll pick up where he left off when he is healthy, which has not been too much over the last few years.
Well, he missed 3 games last year, but he always seems to be questionable, but he manages to play, and then, you give him a bunch of volume, and we're talking about him as, a high-end RB2.
The other problem is ankles have always been his issue. It's always been an ankle issue. Always. So whatever it is probably related to whatever chronic issues he's dealing with.
And he's 29, turned 30. It's a lot. So when you get older running backs dealing with injuries during training camp, I call it the CM. I should have had this rule a long time ago, but I call it the CMC rule. I run away. So that's kind of how I want to treat this. But it is early enough in training camp. Doesn't sound like too significant injury, as Brian is pointing out there, where I'm necessarily going to totally run away. Here's what I think is interesting, Chase. And I don't think ADP's caught up to this news yet. He was on a trend. He was up 16 spots overall. He's up to 47. He was down in the 60s just recently, right ahead of Chuba Hubbard, David Montgomery, James Conner, Aaron Jones. Those are kind of the top names, like, are right behind him. He is right behind Kenneth Walker. I don't know if this news, because it's not significant, is going to change that drastically, but he was on a trend up. So what do you make of that?
I'm not sure, because I'm not a biggest Kenneth Walker dude, but I would take Walker over Mixon. I want Hubbard over Mixon this year. I think I like Joe Mixon in terms of what he's given me, in the past, because when I've had him, but he's always been that volume type of guy. Well, do they need to give him that type of volume now? I mean, we don't know necessarily what Nick Chubb still has left in the tank, and he's coming off, catastrophic, weird injury stuff of his own. But Joe Mixon, especially with this. And I mean, I heard what you just said, no, Brian, and we think he's going to be playing and he's going to be just fine, but he is getting a little older himself. He's always been a volume guy. There are guys going around him I would much rather have than him. I would much rather have James Conner than him right now. I would much rather have Kenneth Walker right now, because when Kenneth Walker is healthy, he blows up. I'd much rather have Chuba. Heck, I'd probably rather have Hampton right now, to be dead honest with you. And I'm a guy that's been stumping for Najee Harris. Was that?
Yeah, Hampton's going ahead of him anyway. So
I know.
Yeah. So audience is with you on that one. Adam, I want to get you real quick in here with the Joe Mixon thing, because when you look at the backup situation, it's Woody Marks as Nick Chubb. I see Woody Marks. I see a guy who has a wet dream of being James White one day, and that's about his ceiling anyway. And then with Nick Chubb, I mean, talk about injuries and not being confident in anything else. So with the lack of depth behind Joe Mixon, are you really that concerned? Or yes?
Exactly what you just kind of laid out there. I'm not worried about it. If you were going to be worried about anyone, it's Damian Pierce. And with that, one, that's a heck of a thing to be worried about. And two, with that now kind of out of the way, it's like, there's just not much to worry about for him. Kind of to your point, I think Woody Marks, I think the Seattle running back that I'm blanking on from a couple of years ago is more likely what we're talking about. That's just in there on a couple third downs enough that it's annoying, maybe. And then otherwise, it's just Joe Mixon. Like, they don't have anyone else to clearly use, and for a team, almost more so than the Dolphins, which is terrifying, by the way, that really has O-line problems. You're going to play the running back thing a pass block over the running back who might be able to catch the ball. So I think Joe Mixon is going to be out there if they can help it.
Yeah,
no love for Daria Agumbawale, huh?
No, we've seen that ship sail so many times. He's going to be back on a practice squad somewhere. With that, Brian, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show, man. Let everybody know what you're all about at the Injured List podcast.
Well, what you see me do here is basically what I do throughout the year with Dan at least once a week, with my own network, that Sports Podcast Network, on TSS Fantasy. Twice a week, we do injury updates throughout the week on Fridays and Sunday mornings early before game time. Basically helping people make those last-minute roster adjustments based on some of the injury news coming out of the different organizations. So with my Injured List podcast, I do all interviews, careers, post-careers, players who are still active in their careers, healthcare providers in and around sports medicine. So you can check that out wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. But more importantly, man, stay tuned to Operation Domination, because we got boatload of information each week to put out there for you to help you guys navigate some of these complex injuries and medical terminologies and horrible reports coming out of the media.
I love it. Man, that's a shout. We're trying to give you the shot. I love it. Download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app, and make sure you're checking out the Fantasy Football Advice Network, sponsors of the Expo yet again this year in 2025 at FF Advice Net. Guys, we'll see you next week. We are here. FantasySportsAdvice.com, offering the best fantasy sports social media platform. Why join endless Discord communities or the trolls of Reddit? Fantasy Sports Advice is a community designed to help you win with 24/7 support. Go to FantasySportsAdvice.com and become a pro member for unlimited access. Again, go to FantasySportsAdvice.com today.